Captain's Log Supplemental. The ship is currently in space dock, receiving upgrades to our weapon systems. Upgraded phaser banks, additional torpedo bays, as well as enhanced shields. While there is no current conflict this is in preparation for, there are rumblings of tensions rising at the Cardassian border. Lieutenant Commander Ta Len, our new security officer, has looked positively giddy and has been spending all of her time calibrating the new systems. When I walked by Tactical earlier today, I think I even heard her whispering to them saying something about making sure her babies are strong and healthy. I need to remember to have the ship's counselor schedule a session with her.
Everybody, welcome to Captain's Log Supplemental. My name is Stanford. Joining me as every week, we have Rob.
Hello.
And Chris.
Howdy.
How are you all doing tonight?
Just fantastic.
Well.
Good.
Super great.
So before we begin, I just want to once again ask our lovely audience if they could just do us a favor. Don't forget to rate, review this podcast. Tell your friends about it. That's important too. Podcasts don't have a good sharing algorithm. So, word of mouth is 90% of how people hear about this stuff. So go tell your friends about it. If you don't like the show, go tell your enemies about it. Totally fine as well. Now, did you two know that today is a special day?
How is it special?
Is it Picard Day? I forget what day it is.
It is not, although that was last week, I think.
Okay, yeah.
No. Today is a unique alignment that will never again happen in our lifetimes. Because today we are reviewing an episode of Enterprise wherein two crew members are stuck in a shuttle pod. And the same day that we are recording this, several billionaires just died in the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, God. Gosh. That's dark, man. That's real dark.
Hey, if they didn't want to die at the bottom of the ocean, they shouldn't have flaunted literally every safety measure that would have kept them alive.
That would have made a difference, yeah.
Dude, I was thinking about that while I was watching this episode.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is hitting a little too close to real life right now.
Well, except that I don't necessarily think that Trip and Reed deserve it.
Sure.
So yes, today's episode of Enterprise is actually called Shuttlepod One. And we cold open in one of Enterprise's dorky little shuttle pods. I cannot take them seriously whenever they're on screen.
Oh, I like these things.
I mean, they're not as bad as Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, they remind me of the old Saturn rocket lander modules.
Okay, well, I don't want to I you how you get reminded of something, but I would like you to explain how this looks at all like a Saturn V lander module.
Just in terms of their use, they're just very utilitarian, vaguely cone shaped. I don't know. They're fun little utilities.
I don't like the
devices.
I don't like the forward viewport. It makes it look like a dorky Cyclops.
They still look better than the flying bricks that the Enterprise has in Next Generation in the first couple of seasons.
Oh, the old fashioned ones.
Yeah.
Well, the original series was literally a flying rectangle that was slightly smaller on one side.
Yep.
So, anyways, it is. We have Reed and Tucker in this shuttle pod. They're clearly dealing with some kind of mission. Tucker has, and this is historic, finally found a radio that he could not fix, despite his bragging at that Vulcan monastery.
Wow, that's a little callback action there, huh?
Deep cut.
Yeah, well, when you're recording so far ahead of when these are broadcast, I just heard that episode a couple days ago. We are in the shuttle pod, and they can't get their thing working. They're trying to look for Enterprise where they're supposed to be meeting them around some asteroids. There's this discussion over reading material, and they love doing this stuff where it's I don't want you to read those ridiculous sci-fi novels. All right, we get it. It's a sci-fi show. Yep, very clever, very clever. But then Reed and Tucker go into this weird, we're going to argue over who's better, England or North America.
Yeah, that was...
Yeah, I did not appreciate the cheap shot of Montana. My
Whatever,
adopted
you've
state.
been there for like a year now.
Not even, yeah.
Not even.
It's just also rich that the British are commenting on anything that we're doing.
Right.
But then, as they're getting into the heat of this argument, they find a crater on one of the asteroids, and it's got debris, a lot of it. And one of the pieces of debris has the hull number of the NX-01, the Enterprise. So that's the dramatic conclusion of the cold open and leading us straight into Faith of the Heart. Okay, so we come back from the commercial break with Hoshi talking to the captain about some alien debris because, like, the debris came from a ship that blew up instead of part of the Enterprise. But during the explosion, it also took off one of the Enterprise's shuttle doors. So we as the audience immediately get an explanation as to what Trip and Reed just saw. Okay, but Trip and Reed think that, like, oh no, that the Enterprise has blown up. Archer goes like, hey, so the aliens that were on the ship need boron to breathe. And Phlox is like, we have enough to get them to their planet, but we gotta scoot. We gotta get them over there. And so the Enterprise, I guess, took off. That's why. Archer says, oh, good. Based on how fast Travis is driving, I guess. It's like, oh, good. There's plenty of time before we have to meet back up with Trip and Reed. So he immediately suggests wasting some of that time in order to repair a shuttle bay door or whatever, which he tells engineering to do. I feel like engineering doesn't need to be told to make a new door. Like, that seems pretty standard engineering.
We're just going to leave that giant hole in the hull. I mean, it's no big deal, right? It's fine.
I wasn't told to fix it.
I'd really hope that they would get right on that.
So real quick.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, what are your thoughts? Because I kind of went back and forth on this as to whether storytelling wise it was good and like if it could have been more compelling if we as the audience didn't know what happened to the Enterprise so quickly.
So
it would have been so much better.
I think it would have been better. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I the first couple of minutes that I watched this, I got so much whiplash. I was so confused at first. Like, why they even thought that the Enterprise had wrecked in the first place. It's like, I mean, yeah, you see a little bit of hull there, but where's the rest of the ship? Like, you're just making some pretty big assumptions here. Also, like I get that their radio wasn't working, but, and I know we complained about this before, it just felt like very contrived storytelling.
I agree. I think that if you had an objective, like, third, kind of outside view of the story, that yes, it would have been better if the audience had been kept in suspense at least longer, if not for the whole thing.
Right.
But based on how much camera time was spent just watching them shiver, I don't think they had enough material written.
This is the part where I went back and forth on, because I'm like, we kind of hit the limit as far as Trip and Tucker being interesting.
Mm-hmm. They could have done like an Andy Weir, like The Martian thing, where like they keep having to fix shit and like coming up with different engineering solutions to these crazy problems that they're dealing with, and like if we had focused on that, and then suddenly the Enterprise showed up at the end, that would have been a better story. Because as it stands, this was an awful episode. It was worthless.
It felt super weird. Like, compared to everything else we've seen so far, this one, I felt like somebody rewatched Apollo 13 and went, yep, we could do that.
I think I generally agree. I think it could have been a good episode, though, I think is the real bad part about this, is because, two people, focus attention on them this episode, like, that can be interesting. You can explore characters more. You can flesh out these characters who, especially for Malcolm, who really hasn't done much in the series so far,
right?
And they could have done it in interesting ways, but they just didn't.
No, and they flesh out the absolute worst parts of the character for Reed.
Yep.
So T'Pol is talking to Archer, and she's like, it looks like a microsingularity. And Archer's like, microsingularities are a Vulcan myth. Fun fact, we actually make microsingularities at the Large Hadron Collider like all the time. It's not that hard to do. They're a real thing. And I'm pretty sure they were back in 2002 as well. But I digress.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was thinking about that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we do that now.
Yes, micro black holes are a real thing. We make them all the time. They do not last very long because they emit basically all of their mass in Hawking radiation before they can actually start devouring anything. Whee! Okay, so we cut back to Trip and Reed. They're kind of floating around the debris, trying to figure out if it's the Enterprise or not. Then Trip is like, hey, maybe we should try to find the black box, but Reed's like, no, our sensors are down. And then Reed's like, or Trip's like, well, then maybe we can, send a signal. And Reed's like, well, we can't use the portable ones because those only have a few 10 million kilometer reach or some shit. I guess they don't have portable trackers, just portable beacons, whatever. Anyways, no matter what Trip says, Reed says, no, fuck you. And it's really obnoxious. And so I kind of agree with Trip here as he's like, can you knock it off? But then they have the stupidest argument of all time when they're talking about like, well, let's aim for a star. And Reed's like, I don't know, navigation's down. And Trip's like, go that way. And then they do. The end. Like this whole episode is completely worthless. We learn nothing useful and there's no story. It's just not good.
I like this whole thing, like this whole episode I'm watching, I can tell the idea they had in mind. And it's like Kevin in The Office where he's carrying the chili pot into the office and then he just trips and it splashes all over the floor. It's like, this could have been so good. And you just dump the chili pot on the floor.
I mean, we did learn one really important thing that'll come up later though.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't wait to find out what that is.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you now, it's not a huge spoiler.
Okay.
A Trip and Reed apparently slept with the same waitress back in San Francisco.
Oh my fucking God. I have so many notes about these goddamn stories. We're going to get there.
Yeah.
So we come back from the commercial. Reed is leaving a horrifying personal log of how fucking awful everything is. And Trip's like, can you knock it the fuck off and help me? Which again, like, yeah, come on, man.
Well, I think it's funny that like Reed is the one who has so much to say in this situation.
Right.
When this whole series so far, he has said basically nothing the entire time.
Right. Which I think is what the writers were trying to do, was give him some character, but they did a shit job. The episode with his birthday did a better job of giving him some character than this fucking nonsense. So
yeah, I like the birthday bit.
But Reed kind of gives us an idea of what happened. And here's what happened. They wanted to test some kind of new sensor alignment for targeting, okay? But they didn't want the Enterprise interfering with it, I guess whatever is going on in the Enterprise or the asteroid field. So him and Trip jump into the shuttle pod to go a bunch of millions of kilometers away to test this thing. Now, shuttle pods in this show, in this particular series, do not have warp capabilities. They're just impulse shuttles, okay?
Right.
So they fly away. Gone. Okay. Then the Enterprise is mapping this asteroid field because that's a thing they need to do for whatever reason. I'm not a scientist, I don't know. But they stumble upon this alien spaceship that explodes, or they try to rescue him, it explodes, it blows up the thing, yada, yada, yada. And then Dr. Phlox is like, hey, I got them breathing the boron that we got on board, but we need to scoot. We need to get them back to their planet. I guess at no point did anyone say, hey, why don't we just go scoop up Reed and Trip and then head out? Because we can travel faster than light and they cannot. So instead their plan was, well, we'll be back before they're supposed to be back, so we'll just go.
Yeah, and like this is the part where it didn't make any sense, man. This whole situation was just very awkward.
And like the shuttle mission returns to the rendezvous point to find that their starship is gone is a classic Star Trek episode timeline or storyline. It happened at least 3 times in Voyager. It's probably happened in all of them. Voyager's freshest in my mind. But like that storyline works if the shuttle has to can go faster than light. when the shuttle is going just impulse, that storyline doesn't work. To the fucking faster than light ship, they're just over there. Just go grab them real quick.
Yep.
But but so anyways, this whole fucking thing is a little contrived. So anyways, they find some rations on the ship that they're gonna eat. They've got they got mugu gai pan. They've got some kind of masala. I didn't hear what the actual meat was on the masala.
I assume chicken, but
it was not. He said some other word there, but I don't remember what it was.
Nice Chilean sea bass.
Yes, sea bass. And then...
Dude, I really like the static-free packaging these things were in. Like it looked like somebody just grabbed some graphics cards and, these will double as MREs.
Yeah, and thankfully the microwave was working so they could heat up their foods. Although Reed was that office douche who heats up fish in the break room because he immediately goes for the fish. They also find a bottle of Kentucky bourbon because of course they do.
Well, yeah, you got to have something they can get drunk on and act drunk for a scene.
Malcolm is incredibly dark and shitty. Then he's leaving this log for his mom, I guess. This log for his mom once they're discovered. And then this pursues this passive aggressive back and forth, which
they're so passive aggressive.
I kind of enjoyed. That part was funny.
Yeah. Okay. I did. I agree. I did enjoy that one. It was pretty good.
But then Trip's like, can we please get some sleep? And Reed's like, there's less than 9 days of oxygen left. Seems like a waste to spend it sleeping. That's a lot of days. 9 is a lot. You should probably get some sleep, man.
Also, don't you probably use less oxygen while you're sleeping? Since you're not,
probably, yeah.
Breathing is hard because you're not active.
I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah, your metabolism slows down, so I would assume you're using less of the oxygen.
We kind of fade to black, and then we come to one of the tropes in media that I hate the most, which is the you think everything's fine, but oh, it's a dream moment, which I fucking hate. It's
and not only was this that, it was also a dirty dream.
It was unfucking comfortable. There was nothing comfy going on here.
Here's my notes for this. Malcolm has a dirty dream about DePaul. This is gross. This makes me uncomfortable. Good Lord, he looked at her tits. Please make this scene in. Stinky? Saved by the static.
It was so cringy, man. The whole time I'm like, oh God, no, Reed, no.
I've got on here, stinky fucking idiots. I don't know why, but the fact that was the supposedly cute little word he was using made it so much worse. It was not even a good joke.
It was just,
there was like a reference to don't Vulcans think that humans smell funny or something? Wasn't that mentioned earlier in the series?
I was thinking that was a reference to that, but it was so loose of a reference. I didn't it didn't land for me.
It just wasn't good. This whole scene is very uncomfortable, vaguely sexist, and just not good. But don't worry, the sexism gets worse later. In this episode, mind you, I don't mean later in the series, although it does there too. So, while after they woke up, Trip's still working on some shit, and then the shuttle pod is rocked by an impact, and suddenly there is a leak in the hull, and on two sides, and they got to figure this shit out. They can't find the hole; it's too small. Trip says, "Oh, I know," and he starts opening some shit, which he called nitrogen. I don't know why the nitrogen was smoky. That's not how nitrogen works.
It's a gas that they used. Hey, stop asking questions. Shut up, Stanford.
Maybe it was liquid nitrogen?
That wouldn't fill the room with smoke. It might effervesce a little bit as it came out.
Shut up.
But the air is already nitrogen. You can't see that shit. That's kind of the whole point.
Shut up, Stanford.
I watched this episode twice, and both times I'm like, did he just say fucking nitrogen? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so then they had to plug the holes with potatoes.
So anyways, they find the holes, and they're like, well, what are we going to patch it with? Well, I can't reach the cabinet with the kits for patching because they're covering the holes with their hands. If you need a second to go grab something, it would be okay. But all right, whatever. Reed's like, here, give me the rest of your mashed potatoes from your lunch. And then Trip does a very impressive maneuver where he manages to grab this tray between his combat boots. This happens off screen, so you know it didn't actually happen. But then they cover up the holes with the mashed potatoes. That seems to work pretty great. But it turns out that whatever hit them also ruptured one of their reserve oxygen tanks, and now they have less than 2 days worth of air. Now you don't get to sleep. Like, now that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So would potatoes actually work for that? I was trying to.
Absolutely
I don't know.
not.
Okay. My initial thought was no, but I don't know enough about all of that to definitively say that.
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
There are two things wrong with all of this. One, if it's thick enough for like so much air that you like suffered from a 20% decompression in a matter of seconds, there's no way that mashed potatoes are going to be like enough spackle. Like I don't know. Like it's not going to be. It's not going to stop air from flying out into space. The second issue that I had with this is if they lost that much of their compression in mere seconds, I don't understand how this wasn't a catastrophic decompression that just literally blew off one side of the ship.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. I thought about the first part you were saying there's no way mashed potatoes will hold it if it was that fast. But also, yes, on the catastrophic decompression, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the hull. Like, it's going to be strained to the max. I don't know, maybe they polarized it or something, and, it's just magical that way.
Well, no, they actually specifically said the shuttle doesn't have polarized plating in this episode, so that would not work.
Oh, that's right.
Reasons, moving on.
Well, so actually, I'm not 100% sure on how the explosive decompression thing works there, because I will say, like, you don't know the lattice structure of the hull. Like, it may be designed to not do that. There's this fabric that the military uniforms are made of called rip stop, and it stops rips by basically every piece of fabric is sewn with these like grid of stitches so that once the rip gets to one of those grids and is no longer like actively being ripped, if it goes further, it will stop at those stitches, right? That's why it's called rip stop fabric. If you made the lattice of structure of your hull in that kind of manner with like little tiny panels, then that's as big as an explosive decompression will get, right? Because obviously the lattice itself can withstand the pressure of the inside of the capsule.
I don't know. I don't know if you're making assumptions there.
Yeah, it's the difference in pressure from inside to outside.
Right, but bear in mind, too, that the difference between the inside and the outside of a shuttle pod like this is actually not that big. Because it's one atmosphere. That's all it is. It's one atmosphere difference.
One atmosphere compared to a vacuum.
Right. Yeah, that's one atmosphere difference. You can actually keep up to 3 atmospheres of air in your cheeks using just your muscles and lungs. Or is it 3 or is it 2.5? It's somewhere around there. The difference between zero pressure and like at ground level pressure is not as much as like the ability of like really heavy duty materials to withstand it. Airplanes very, very rarely explosively decompress. They get holes in them all the fucking time.
Okay.
If you're trying to make me feel better, you're not making me feel better.
Yeah, don't go in an airplane. There you go.
Or don't go in a sub built by a rich person with lacking of safety standards.
Well, that's explosive compression. Right?
Bringing it back around.
Rip, you dumb kings. All right, so where the fuck was I on here? Okay, so they figure out like, well, I should have deflected a meteor twice that size or whatever. It didn't, whatever. So then we're going to talk about the ladies that we diddled. That's like a substantial portion of screen time is talking about people that they had sex with. And it turns out they had sex with the same lady back at the academy. And it is said in a way that if it's not like the implication that they intended, it is certainly one that I drew of the like, Trip was in love with this lady, but then Reed's like, oh, this lady? I had sex with her a bunch of times, and so therefore she's worn out and useless. Like, It's real fucking bad.
I mean, I didn't make that exact draw from it. I mean, I get where you're coming from with that based on what Malcolm's reaction was to him. I just took it more as a, I also slept with that lady. We dipped our pen in the same inkwell, so to speak.
The facial expressions I caught from Reed were basically like, so, good thing you missed that because she's a slut. Like, that's the expression I got from him. Maybe that's just me assuming the worst because this show is awful, but like, that is what it felt like.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I didn't get that, but I can see where you did.
I was going to say, I didn't get that either. Like, especially from Trip's point of view, like, I thought that, like, he was going to be the guy like, oh, man, I wound up with somebody sloppy seconds. But he just kind of was like, well, that's something I didn't know about her. And
they just shrugged it off and moved on, yeah. I think that's partially why I didn't get that same thought.
It's because y'all were thrown off by a Southern charm.
Good.
Yeah. We don't know how to interpret British facial expressions, I guess.
Yeah, that's it.
Fun fact, Tucker's honors biology class is completely fucking wrong. Your hair and nails do not continue growing after you die. Instead, your body actually retracts away from them.
Interesting. Did not know.
Yes. It's a popular myth that your hair and nails keep growing after you die. They do not. You're dead. Things don't keep growing. But the soft tissues in your body start to shrivel as you like dry out or whatever. And so your finger, like the paddy parts of your fingers and the subcutaneous layers of fat under your scalp start to recede and shit. And so that is actually why it looks like your hair and nails keep growing.
Speaking of shit,
Gross.
your bowels, as I say, the other gross part about dying is you have to evacuate your bowels as well. Whee!
Yeah. Back on the Enterprise, microsingularities. Whoa! That's now a thing. T'Pol's like, we should study this, and Archer's like, are you suggesting that the lives of my men are less important than these microsingularities?
Whoa!
And T'Pol's like, no, but I mean, she kind of did, but like, it's okay.
He jumped right on top.
He
of
did
that.
too. That was so.
There had been
random.
no mention of Tucker and Trip, and all of a sudden, like he just solid.
Yeah, she never said, "Hey, Captain, let's put off our rendezvous to study this." She just said, "Like, hey, like when we get a chance, we should probably study this." And he's like,
Archer
"Are you?"
goes into Captain Dick mode.
Captain Dick mode. Cut back to the shuttle. Malcolm's sending dumb letters to women that he had flings with. It's real fucking bad. This guy turns into such a douche immediately.
It's very it's sad. It's like, ew, why do you don't why are you using your last time to make this message to somebody who probably doesn't even care about you anymore?
I'm glad that Trip at least called him out on it.
Mm-hmm. It's starting to get cold because they have turned the air temperature down. Right. In order to allow the air filters to be more efficient. I don't know the science on that, but whatever. They have turned it to about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, -5 degrees Celsius. Okay. That's going to become important later.
That's pretty cold.
It's pretty cold, but it's not in a completely dry environment. It's not impossibly cold. This is the point at which I asked, do they have spacesuits? Because those feel like they would be useful at this point.
I mean, go ahead. Somebody else.
The other thing I was going to ask, there are these things that like the U.S. Navy uses on submarines that I saw on a YouTube episode of something. I don't remember what, but they're like oxygen candles, and they burn them every once in a while to replenish oxygen in the atmosphere.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So like,
interesting.
I feel like that would be something useful to bring into a space situation. Like, I understand not bringing it into the International Space Station because fire in a space station is generally bad, but like, this is, a century further into the future.
I mean,
I'm sure they have.
He literally lights a candle.
He lights a candle. Yeah, that's a thing that they did in this episode. Yeah,
right. So like, I don't know, man. Like, that's a really simple technology that I would think would be worth bringing into space.
Sure. You know where else it'd be worth bringing a candle that makes oxygen?
Into a sub.
Into a sub with 5 billionaires at the bottom of the ocean.
Have you seen the size of that sub?
It's
I don't
very
think there's
small.
room. Yeah, there's not room for a candle to be lit in there without setting someone
Yeah,
on fire.
apparently there wasn't even room for a window so you can actually see what the fuck you're looking at.
God.
For $250,000, they got a worse view of the Titanic than you can go get for free on YouTube right now.
Hey, but you know what? At least they got a burial at sea.
Like 10 seconds of a skippable hemorrhoid ad, and you could see a better Titanic than these assholes.
Well, you know, they're dead. So,
Anywho. The spacesuits, yeah. Okay, so Tripp's at this point like, fuck it, let's get drunk. And apparently the shuttle just has glassware. Seems like an odd addition to a shuttle, but whatever. So they start pouring alcohol, and they're like, the bourbon's going to keep us warm. Here's another fun medical fact. No, it's not. No, it does. No, it does not. Alcohol is a
lowers your body temperature.
vasodilator. It makes you feel like you're warmer because the nerves that make you feel warm are near your skin. So when your capillaries dilate and your blood rushes to your skin, you feel warmer. However, that also means that you are radiating more heat from your blood near your skin. It actually lowers your core temperature. Do not drink if you're in the cold.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, this message brought to you by a guy who had like a search and rescue class twice in high school. Like, this isn't rocket science. Also, if you're lost, stay where you are. Fucking Jurassic Park, man.
yeah. I mean, that's long been like a Hollywood thing, right? Let's drink to warm up. And I know like that's like a myth or a inaccuracy that's been around for a long time, but like I see it all the time in movies and TV shows.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So anyways, they get drunk. Then Malcolm goes basically, boo-hoo, I'm the worst person ever. And Tripp's like, no, you're not. Stop being a dick. And, oh no, I'm sorry. That's when they start drinking. Then they're drunk. Because, I don't know, actors love pretending they're drunk. They're not good at it.
Poorly. No.
Not even Tucker. The actor who's playing Tucker is not really great. And then they start describing to Paul in this weird, creepy, objectifying way.
You ever noticed the bum?
Oh my God. Reed said bum like 3 times. And I
Yes,
wanted to
we
punch
get
him
it.
in his smug fucking face.
He's horny and he's
catch
British.
up. Yeah, I was trying to catch up to the Stinkies, man. They were keeping the score between those two.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable. Then they get a message on the radio because the radio's fixed enough to receive a message, although they cannot transmit. It's Hoshi, hooray! But it's going to be another 2 days because the Enterprise unilaterally changed their rendezvous time without ever getting a confirmation from the people. Like, the Enterprise clearly does not give a fuck about Trip or Reed in this shuttle pod.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Not even a little bit.
They'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so we come back from the commercial break. These are 2 very shivery motherfuckers. Maybe they shouldn't have drank all that alcohol. They are so shivery.
Yeah, I was watching this. I'm like, man, you know what? It must be exhausting, like pretending to be cold. Just like shaking for like scenes over and over again. Like, I would be so tired after that.
I wonder if they actually chill the soundstage so it's easier for them to do it.
I wonder.
But
I don't think
It didn't
I don't
look
think you
real.
understand.
that's true.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you've ever been on like a set stage before. Those lights are really hot.
Are they? I
Like
have not
really
actually.
hot.
Yeah. Like even dude, I've been on a stage of like a high school play and those lights are hot. So I can only imagine what it's like on an actual like professional recording stage.
This is the part where I'm like, -5 Celsius isn't really that cold. Like, they have blankets, they would be okay. Not like perfectly fine, but okay.
Well, it's below freezing, so you know it's cold.
Tripp's comic strip joke that he relates, best piece of humor in the whole episode. That's a good joke.
I honestly don't remember that.
Oh,
at
it's
all.
they're talking about, oh, well, they're gonna go to snail's pace, and so Tripp's like, I remember this comic strip.
Oh, okay.
2 snails are sitting on the back of a turtle, and one of the snails says, "You better buckle up and hold on. Here we go."
I get it. You're saying it was not a good joke,
I'm
but
not
it's still
saying
the best
it
one.
was the best joke ever. I chuckled because of his delivery, but it was the best piece of humor in this episode so far.
I don't know. I grabbed their passive-aggressive spat. That was entertaining.
That was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Then they get into a fight, and because Tucker's like, well, I guess then, like, we have to wait for them to show up, so I'll sacrifice myself so you can live twice as long. There's a thing about stunning each other with pistols, which, like, I feel like, would a stun reduce your oxygen intake? Because maybe they should just stun themselves. That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines of sleeping, right?
This is the point where I was like, there's no stakes here. Like, we know they're going to be fine. So this writing is just not great because it's like, okay, it's dramatic. They jettison their engine and blow it up in order to attract the Enterprise. It's a whole thing. Then we wake back up in the Enterprise, and surprise, it goes just like Reed's dream goes for about 3 lines of dialogue. And then he's like, to Paul, don't you have something else to say? And she's like, no, fuck you, and walks out. And it's supposed to be this moment of like, ha ha ha, wink. And it's fucking obnoxious and shitty.
Yeah, it was.
My final note is, what a worthless episode.
It was a large eye roll moment. Like, ugh.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good.
Yeah, it was an episode of Enterprise.
It was an episode of Enterprise.
It was an episode. All right, so we will be back after this really quick break, and then I will be back with my deep dive. Welcome back, everybody. So we have dated ourselves in when we record this by explaining how excited we are that 5 rich assholes have lost their lives. But actually, this week is not just that. It is also the week following Father's Day. So whether or not you have picked up on it yet, I am a father, as is Chris. Rob has pets, so that's pretty close.
I'm the cool uncle. Yeah.
Rob's the very cool uncle. When my son was little, we used to have this joke because he loved his Uncle Rob so much. We used to have the joke that he would be like, wish you were my dad.
Well, be a better dad. I don't know what to tell you, Stan.
Yeah. It's the walk-in. I think he's just really easily impressed by that.
Oh.
All right. So, given that it is just past Father's Day, I thought that we would talk about some of the fathers in Star Trek. Okay. We are going to start with the very first father of the show. Who do you think I'm talking about?
These are like the characters, right?
Yep. And I'll give you a hint. We find out that he's a father in 1982.
Oh boy.
I have no idea.
So I'm assuming it's through one of the movies then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It is James T. Kirk.
Jimmy Kirk.
In Wrath of Khan, we find out that kid is his son.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But we don't really get a good sense of him as a father because mostly he just complains about being old the whole time, and then he has to deal with Ricardo Montalban. So he's a little busy. But in TNG, we get a good sense of a father, and that is Worf. Worf has a son.
Oh, just terrible father.
And he is at first a terrible father. There are several episodes of TNG which all revolve around Worf being a bad dad.
Like, seriously bad. Like, he is... Ooh. Like... he is not great.
And there's a level of, like, late 80s, early 90s sitcom trope of, like, I guess we'll just leave the kid with the father. Look how incompetent he is. But the fact that it's given this, like, Klingon flavoring makes it so much, A, more tolerable, and B, fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's like watching it back now as dad. I'm like, oh no.
It's like, dude,
no.
try a little bit.
Yeah, just like put like a minimum amount of effort in.
Mm-hmm. By the way, that fact, because I'm sure I'm going to get corrected on it, about Kirk being the first father in 1982, I don't know if there are any other fathers in TOS because I did not really watch it. So that is the first time I'm aware of one, which basically is good enough for me.
Some rigorous researching you've done for this.
Yes.
Well, that works out.
I guess we meet Spock's dad a couple times, but I'm talking like a father of like not quite an adult at least on the show. So Worf doesn't do a great job, but like I don't know, the episodes are kind of sweet in the end when he's like, well, I guess I need to do a better job being your father.
I mean, sure, but also like he's like, no, fuck you, kid. I'm gonna kill myself because I can't walk. I'm sure this is one of your favorite episodes, by the way.
I forgot that happened.
Yup.
Ah, goddamn fucking Hollywood, man. Here's a note to any aspiring screenwriters out there. Being wheelchair bound should not be something you should kill yourself about, because there are real people who are wheelchair bound and maybe it shouldn't be that bad, huh? Fucking Worf. Anyways, then we get to the seasons long father-son relationship of Sisko and Jake. Oh, well, Sisko and his son Jake Sisko. What is Commander Sisko's first name?
Benjamin.
Ben. That's right, Benjamin. Benjamin and Jake. Which this is apparently, and there's not much I can speak to on this level because, I grew up in a black neighborhood, but I am not myself black, so I cannot comment on this. But apparently there is a fair amount of weight in the fact that in 1995, a healthy black fatherhood was shown on TV because of DS9, which is kind of cool.
That is
sure.
Cool.
Because we're like right in the height of like fucking super predators and Biden and Clinton's war on crime and all that shit.
Right.
But there is a tenderness to the relationship between Ben and Jake that you don't really get to see in a lot of shows of the time period. That is very, very refreshing to see.
When I've watched DS9, that part has always impressed me about Benjamin Sisko's emotional openness with his son.
Yes, and their relationship does evolve as the show goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I feel like...
sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, I feel like of all of the captains that could have been at Deep Space Nine, I feel like Sisko was like a perfect choice. I don't know. He's just a super level-headed guy. He's very like aware of other people's emotions in a way that some of the other captains haven't been. I don't know. I really liked him. I liked the actor they picked to play him. Like overall,
he's a fun actor.
That was a really great role.
Yes, I agree. So, but there's actually another father-son relationship that we get to see explored on DS9 that is also surprisingly tender and good. Do you know who I'm talking about, Chris?
It's Nog, right? Nog and his dad.
Nog.
Can't remember his dad's name.
Kid?
Nog is the kid. I can't remember his dad's name.
I thought Nog was the adult, but yes, Nog and his dad. That is also a relationship that kind of evolves over time. Nog
really evolves over time a lot too. Like that's talk about character development. He totally changes. Yeah.
He changes a lot, and then they use him as an avenue to talk about like PTSD and imposter syndrome and a lot of other things. But the idea that Nog's father has to deal with the fact that his son is not following in his footsteps, but like he wants something better for his son, and we get to kind of see that on screen.
Yep.
As that's kind of fleshed out. Good dad times.
I liked his friendship with Jake Sisko too. That was fun.
They did a good job with that. They did a good job because there were some falling outs and some reconciliations that I think are very reasonable and realistic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
Having had my share of falling outs with friends.
Also, a fun uncle-nephew relationship there with Quark.
Yeah.
Quark, that is one of Quark's more reasonable and tender kind of aspects, is his protectiveness of his nephew. It's kind of nice. I don't know what she is doing, but Mariah is making as much noise as she can right behind me. So
there's also another dad in DS9.
Yes, there is. Go ahead.
Miles O'Brien.
Miles O'Brien.
However, I don't remember a whole lot of interaction with his kid in that show.
So, what is his kid's name? I forget. Him and Keiko have a kid, and this kid is mostly like very little for the beginning of the show.
Well, she's born on Enterprise in Next Generation.
Yes. Yeah. There is definitely at least one episode where Keiko has to go study language on Bajor. So he is forced to like be a single dad for a weekend. And it is that stereotypical, like, well, how can a mother juggle all of these things? Like, I'm a man. I can't do all of this nonsense. When it's like, your wife also had a full-time job.
Yeah. By the way, do you remember who delivered the child on Enterprise?
I'm going to say
not
Crusher. Is
by
that
question.
wrong? Yeah.
It is wrong. It is a dad we've spoken about just recently.
Was it Worf?
It
It was Worf, yeah.
Oh,
That was an entertaining.
It has been a very long time since I've seen TNG. So, moving on to Voyager, there are kind of two dads I want to talk about on Voyager. One is Tom. Now, I'm not sure B'Elanna ever actually gives birth on the show.
I don't remember.
I'm in like the last season because I'm kind of just watching while I work, and we're almost done with the season, and she's like 6 months pregnant. She's
still
give birth.
pregante.
Right. But we do get to see Tom shift from being like not a dad to a dad in his mentality and in his kind of outlook over the course of a few episodes. And it's not poorly done. It's all right. It's all right. It's not like the best treatment of that kind of shift, but it's done at least fairly sensitively. And there is an acknowledgement that priorities tend to shift when you become a parent, as he realizes that like, oh, I need to, like, this is not as important to me now because I have a baby on the way. The other father I want to talk about, I'm actually curious if either of you remember this. There is another character who has been in several different Star Trek seasons and series.
As different characters or the same character?
Same character who becomes a father during Voyager.
What?
He has been in... Yes, that's right.
Oh, yeah. I remember now. Okay.
Yeah, so Q becomes a father in an episode. And he names Catherine Janeway the kid's godmother. That happens at the end of one episode because she helps the Q continuum. It's this whole thing where it's like Dances with Wolves. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it was a weird episode.
It was a weird episode. But in a later episode, the kid is now like a teenager and Q is having trouble dealing with him. So he leaves the kid with Janeway because the kid's kind of like acting out. Okay. So the kid's going to learn like, how to not be a shitty person because that's what the Q continuum cares about. But the kid's storyline aside, there is a level of kind of interesting fatherhood exploration in the character of Q from the beginning of the episode, who's like, ew, get rid of this snot-nosed brat, towards the end of the episode where he's like, oh, I understand now better what my role is here and what like fun my son can be to hang around. And that is something that like even in real life, our culture sometimes struggles with here in America. Cause the father is always kind of given this like, either they're just an incompetent idiot who can't change a diaper through their own fault or not. Or they're like, well, that's the breadwinner, so he doesn't get to play with the child. His job is to go work, this classic masculine bullshit cultures. It's nice to see like an acknowledgement of like, I enjoy hanging out with my kid. He's fun. That's why I like hanging out with him, And I know that's true in my life. I don't know, Chris, maybe your twins are shitty and you hate them, but I doubt
God. No, they actually we're gonna play some Magic this weekend. Actually, they started going to camp and they're been exposed to Magic the Gathering. So
Ooh.
They now have a deck and want to play with me, so that'll be fun.
I have played Pokemon
is
with
fun.
Liam.
Pokemon is not fun. Pokemon is a terrible game.
It's not, but it is easy for a 7-year-old to pick up.
True.
I think Liam could learn Magic at this point because he's gonna be 10 in February. So, yeah,
He's pretty quick at picking up rules. I think he could do it.
he is. He doesn't have the attention span to actually we wouldn't get through a whole game, but
Sure.
I think he could learn to play it. He wants to, but we would have to play it on the computer probably.
You know
'cause
what?
I'm
You
not
just
buying all the stars.
mercilessly crush him fast enough. He'll get through a whole game.
That's my approach to teaching him chess.
Just red aggro deck all the time.
Red aggro. Ugh. So yeah, so it's nice. It's nice seeing a TV father who actually enjoys hanging out with his kid, even if it is Q and it's kind of weird, but whatever. So those are the fathers I wanted to kind of highlight. You see some father-son relationships, or it doesn't have to be a son. Excuse me. Some father-kid relationships. In some of the newer shows, Discovery has a whole relationship between Michael and her Vulcan dad, which is kind of an interesting thing to explore because it is a lot of exploration of what her impressions of his expectations for her were and how they are actually different. It also talks about kind of how stepchildren interact with one another, which is kind of interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
They also kind of go into how Giorgio, I don't want to say she introduced her to human culture and kind of became her surrogate human mom because she already had a human mom. But I don't know. It seems like Giorgio had a pretty huge impact on who Michael became.
Sure, absolutely. And that relationship between her and Sarek, is that her dad's
Sarek,
name?
yeah.
Sarek, yeah, because it's Spock's dad. The relationship between her and Sarek is interesting because you get that standard stilted, he's a Vulcan, so he's kind of, a standoffish douche the whole time. But it's obvious that he does put a priority on the well-being of his children. And it's nice that they kind of show that even through the lens of, this kind of Vulcan stoicism. And in the most recent show, and this is what I was going to kind of end with, Picard turns out as a father, and he does a fucking horrible job at it, which is not a surprise to anybody.
Well, I mean, he specifically avoided having children because he knew he would be a shitty dad. That topic is explored on numerous episodes.
Yeah, no, he was totally great with Wesley. What are you talking about?
Shut up, Wesley.
He's more like a condescending grandpa figure.
Yeah,
really.
He knew he would not be a good dad. He made the conscious decision to not do it. Except then he, fucked up. But Picard just too sexy for his own good.
Oh God. Oh my God, that show was so anyways, so that is a quick run through some of the dads of Star Trek. Happy Father's Day, although it is much belated because we're 8 weeks out from our recording to our actual broadcast.
Yes.
But a happy, much belated Father's Day and Mother's Day because we missed that one last month. To our listeners out there.
What, you just care about Dad, Stanford?
Well, yeah, because it was on Sunday, man. And I am one. Next Mother's Day here. Tell you what, next Mother's Day we'll let Mariah, Lauren, and Kelsey run the podcast.
Oh, that's that.
And they can. That sounds fantastic.
We're gonna have to pay them actual money to do that. I think
I have money.
But it's your wife. She's not making anything on this.
If I pay her money and then she gives the money to me, I'll think I got money. It's awesome.
Perfect logic right there.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break and then we will be back with Potpourri.
All right, welcome back. For this week's Potpourri, I thought that it would be a good idea to completely steal an idea from another podcast I listened to.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, have you ever heard of Tales of Tamriel before, Stanford?
Tamriel sounds familiar. Oh, that's Elder Scrolls IP, right? That's
Yeah.
Bethesda's Elder Scrolls Fantasy World. Yeah.
So the UESP has a podcast called Tales of Tamriel.
They do? Why do I not know about this?
I don't know. It's pretty fun to listen to. A lot of what they talk about is ESO, so I don't know how much of that you would enjoy.
I mean, ESO is all right. I'm more interested in the lore.
Yeah, and they do talk a lot about lore on there. It's a really fun podcast. I like listening to it, but like niche audience, like Elder Scrolls fans, you know. But they had a cool talk this week about how the more recent releases of Elder Scrolls Online expansions haven't included like physical collector's editions, and they were talking about because of that, like what other types of companion media you would like to see in the fandom. And I got to thinking about how that would apply to Star Trek. For me personally, for example, I'm kind of getting my wish. And it's a very recent announcement. If you listen to our bonus episode on this new like Star Trek Grand Strategy game coming out from, it's one of Paradox's affiliate studios. Like, I'm super pumped about this. I have modded my Stellaris in the past to like basically become Star Trek Stellaris. So I am super pumped and very excited to see what they come up with. I don't know if it's going to be anything like Stellaris. I hope that it is, and I am very excited to see what they make.
I have found out a little more information on that. It's actually a grand strategy game where you play one of the 4 empires and the whole galaxy is dealing with the Borg, or the whole sector.
Interesting.
So it is actually grand strategy.
Okay.
So what's the difference
between grand strategy and 4X?
So like what's the differentiation for you there?
So I don't know. So we've had this discussion. I've had this discussion with several different groups of friends because I don't like the word grand strategy gets used a lot these days because Stellaris is sometimes called a grand strategy game, which I don't think I agree with, but I do understand that this is kind of a feely kind of thing. Like, you know, it's like that like, I don't know what, I can't define it, but I'll know when I see it kind of thing.
That's like genres of music. Like it's
right. Generally, my kind of criterion for whether or not it is grand strategy is whether the map and territories of the playing empires or whatever they are predefined and known and start the same way every time.
Gotcha. So, you know,
that is what to me feels like the defining function of like a grand strategy game.
Gotcha.
Because you kind of drop a lot of that exploration pillar.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the other Paradox titles then fall under your grand strategy moniker.
Yes. Stellaris is the only one of the the Paradox strategy titles that we play that I would not call a grand strategy. But every single other one, especially because they're all based on Earth, pretty much. Right. Like,
unless you mod them.
So as I understand it, this game is going to start with the 4 empires in a state of, you know, diplomatic whatever as the game starts, and then you take over one and deal with these crises as they come.
I think that makes a lot of sense for the time period it's starting.
It's interesting. I don't think any Star Trek game has done this yet.
Yeah, that actually makes me more excited for it.
Yeah,
it does. The only problem I have is that like it sounds like there are only 4 empires, which means we're going to have a lot of trouble playing it together.
Well,
yeah, we'll see what goes.
Maybe they'll pull in that relatively new beta tech that allows you to co-op in Stellaris.
Oh shit! Yeah, we could just play the same empire.
Right.
Yeah, like we'll be in charge of the Federation. Oh, perfect. Okay, we'll be in charge of the Federation. Rob can do economy. Chris can do the military, and I'll run the music.
Well, this again.
DJ Stanford.
It's been so far the best time I've had in Stellaris.
That's funny.
So when you're saying that, you know, your companion media, you mean that is not a show?
Correct. Yeah. So like it's a part of the fandom that it's not the main the main feed essentially. So like when they were talking about it on Tales of Tamriel, they were talking about books and comics and a TV show or a video, like a movie for them would not be the main vein that, you know, they tap to actually get their Elder Scrolls fix, right?
Sure.
So like,
okay.
What would you guys want to see more of from the Star Trek fandom?
I have an idea that I have thought about for pretty much every like IP universe I've been interested in. I listen to a fair amount of podcasts that are like about history or like historical events. And like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, for example, and just to throw one out there. Although that one I had to stop listening to because they're just too fucking long and involved. Like I was listening to an audiobook every couple of months. It was too much. But like, that's a good example of like, this is a book or a podcast where he is telling you about an event. He's teaching you the various aspects of the events. He's pulling references to the references and primary sources and secondary sources all about it and talking about it, describing the impact of these things. I always thought it would be very cool, although a lot of work, if there was a podcast, for example, in the Star Trek universe that described the Battle of Wolf 359 as an example, as if it were a historical event. And not just like not like a play acting it. I mean, you've got people who are quote unquote hosting a podcast that would theoretically exist in the Star Trek universe where they analyze and discuss the primary sources, the different accounts, what it meant, and so on and so forth. And doing that kind of like fleshing out the lore of a universe that way through the lens of like a podcast would be really cool. Although it would be a lot of writing. Like that would take some really clever writing.
I'm trying to remember the name. It starts with a T. I think it's like Templar Institute or Templin Institute.
Yes, I follow them on YouTube channel. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I feel like you might dig some of their work then too. I was gonna say because like they had a really cool. I guess it was like a Stellaris role play I listened to where they got into like important, like impactful events over the course of their game and fleshed out like what was really happening behind the scenes.
Right. It would just be really nice to do it in a thing like this because we do know some things about these events or they get mentioned or whatever because they actually happen inside the universe. So it would be cool to then have like an expose about that event,
Yeah, that would be cool. What about you, Chris? What's your big wish?
So I was thinking about it as you guys were talking, and the thing I just keep coming back to is definitely a game. And while the grand strategy of this upcoming game does sound like a lot of fun and definitely up my alley, I think something that really hasn't at least been done well. I know there's been a couple of stabs at it, but more of an RPG style, very story oriented experience where you're the captain of a ship and you're living through the story. There hasn't been anything good game wise.
Yeah, and like I know people have tried this, and even though like the Star Trek MMO kind of tries this too. It's actually kind of an interesting question because there's a lot going on in Star Trek that is tough to simulate at the atomic level that we're used to simulating.
Right.
I've come up with I've come up with this kind of analysis as I've looked at like trying to play a Star Trek RPG, the tabletop Star Trek RPGs, or like a Firefly RPG, or any of these other like space like plucky crew RPGs at the table, and inevitably they don't feel good. They don't feel like we're playing a plucky crew doing these fun little things. They just don't get there, and it's always because the mechanics of the system just don't feel that way. I don't have a way to fix that because if I did, I'd make $1 billion. But
sure, yeah. Well, it's funny. The closest I've gotten to it was an old game. It was a Star Trek game, and it was based on the original series. I don't even remember what the name of it was or when it came out. But I played it as a kid, and it was more of like a point and click adventure game.
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember what it's called. That wasn't Boarding Party, was it?
I honestly don't remember. But it, I think, captured the spirit of Star Trek, and also you explored a story in a fun and then engaging way.
Yeah.
But
I think...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I think the other avenue you could tackle this from, and like I hate to say it, like you almost have to take the trekking out of Star Trek to do it. It would be cool to see characters involved in major incidents in the Star Trek lore, it's tough to do it from a ship crewman's perspective because, like, you essentially always have a job to do, right?
Right.
Like, it's kind of rigid in that look. But, like, if you instead, like, took, like, a Maquis freedom fighter and you're talking about, like, how they're surviving and making do on, like, a Dominion-controlled planet, like, that would give you, like, a good point of contention, an interesting story to tell, and it's still inside of the Star Trek universe, but you lose the Trekkiness to it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that if you're gonna play, like I said, I don't have the answer because if I did, I would write that system and go sell it to Paramount. But I think that the answer might lie in stepping back from the atomic unit of one character that you're playing and instead play a department. So like you're engineering, right? And then like if you have an away team, it's like you got to send an engineer and you've got a whole staff of people that are kind of working together. And as a team, you have your RPG-esque elements of, you know, leveling up and getting, you know, better various bonuses and stuff. And individually, your little team members have traits and stuff. And then they'll do dangerous shit. And sometimes they'll die or get injured, or like, you know, the EPS relays behind their shit all explode and you lose half your crew. Like, I think that might get closer, that structure of a game, but I don't think anyone's ever tried it.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying there. I think you could even do that at like the captain level, right? Like you're having the interactions with other ships and aliens on the bridge, and your traits and everything are your crew you're sending out and developing.
Sure. It'd be almost like a management game instead of.
I was saying that is kind of the part though. Like I'm like, isn't that just more like a simulation game at that point? Like you can make it story oriented where it kind of plays more like an RPG, but you do get into more simulation.
But I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, right? Like you can put RPG elements into almost any kind of game, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty much every game has that now. Some
like
type of element.
I feel like at that point though, you're getting very like dangerously close to like Starfleet Armada territory, or not Armada, Starfleet Academy territory.
You know, I actually never played that.
Oh yeah, like you're basically a captain and you're kind of thrown into an open world where there's ongoing conflicts. But
well, what are you talking about?
Starfleet Academy.
Oh, Starfleet Academy. Okay, I'm like, because that is not Armada.
No. I misspoke. It's Starfleet Academy. So like you are the captain. You get to make decisions like about, you know, your actual ship combat.
Right.
I can't remember if you get to make crew decisions or not. I don't remember. It's been too long.
Yeah.
So I just put a picture in the Discord. Is that the game?
That's the game. Yeah.
That is called the Star Trek the 25th Anniversary. That game got released for like every platform back in 1992. So congratulations.
I knew it was old. Like I knew it was old. I played it on my dad's computer when I was a kid.
Apparently.
Jeez.
You can get it on Steam.
Oh my God. I have to go play that. I remember being incredibly frustrating, so I'm sure it has not improved.
Oh, Interplay is who did it. Oh, yes. Interplay has quite a history.
Hey, you want to know something really funny? A little bit of like Chris and Rob lore here. The entire reason why I wanted to get a Palm Pilot was because of a Star Trek game that existed on it.
Oh, you two are such losers.
Oh, yeah, man.
Chris had one. I forget, was it yours or was it your dad's and you just happened to have it?
Well, my dad had one, and then he eventually got me one, so I don't remember if it was mine or his at the time.
Oh, man, Palm Pilot, what a time to be alive when it's like, wow, these are awful, but they're going to be the greatest things ever in about 2004 when they discovered to make them smartphones instead of this shit thing.
Just smush it into a phone.
Yeah, they got, Palm Pilot 106 was like, wow, y'all got so close, but you didn't quite make it.
Well, it's like BlackBerry is the phone side of that, right? Like,
right.
so close.
Yeah, almost there.
So yeah, I don't know if a Star Trek RPG can ever feel the way we want it to. The concept of an RPG may not fit that feel perfectly.
I generally agree with you there.
You know what environment it would probably work super well in? Because like you could just basically zone into other adventures. Build it as like a Deep Space Nine concept.
That's as you were saying that, I was like, Deep Space Nine would work.
Would it? Well, What do you mean?
You could be like
Because-
the security chief on Deep Space Nine or something.
Right. Yeah. Because it's more like, I feel like more than the other shows, it was very focused on
Yeah, they didn't
character
track-
interplay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, it's that situation.
And
where
that's
you gotta
what's
take the
funny is
checking
because
out.
the part you're talking about in DS9 is the part that everyone at the time lambasted as being the least Star
Yeah.
Trek about anything. That's why they gave him the Defiant, so they could first start fucking moving around.
Mm-hmm. It was still such a good show.
We'll get there.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. DS9.
I like DS9. It's not my favorite Star Trek, but I think it might be number 2.
Right. So, but like, I wonder if like, cause some people really enjoy Mass Effect, and that's got kind of a similar feel to it,
Yeah.
right? With your characters on your ship and stuff, and
Yeah,
you take
that-
the ones you like.
That is, yes. I think that would be probably the best way to go about it, is something like that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But even so,
All
it
right.
doesn't fit perfectly into the Star Trek universe. Like that, captain leading the charge in the ground. Although, I mean, I guess Kirk did, but still.
Well, I think that'll wrap us up for this week, fellas. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for another week of Captain's Log Supplemental. As Stanford brought up at the beginning of the podcast, we'd really appreciate it if y'all could like and subscribe to our podcast. They really helps push us in terms of the algorithm on a lot of these different podcast providers. Either of you have anything else to say before we wrap up for the week?
No, I'm good.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Goodbye. Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.